television screen has become the retina of the mind's eye. That's my television name. Soon, all of us will have special names.
Videodrome is the modern internet. Transgressive, violent, subversive, and all-consuming. A virtual world where you can be anyone and do anything. Everyone's visible, but by their image or icon. Sex, violence, and the need to feel something was relevant in 1983, but is more relevant today. The future is now. Technology changing us at a fundamental level. Long live the new flesh.
Why did you watch it, Max? Business reasons. Sure. What about the other reasons?
Max Wren is a victim.
I woke up with a headache.
He has been exposed to Videodrome.
I've been hallucinating for a while, ever since...
What?
Since I first saw Videodrome.
His brain is already receiving video images. Soon, his visions will coalesce and become uncontrollable flesh. Videodrome is seducing Max Wren, and Max Wren can do nothing to stop it. Television can change your mind. Videodrome will change your body.
Long live the new flesh.
It will shatter your reality. Videodrome. First, it controls your mind. Then, it destroys your body.
Television is reality, and reality is less than television.
Videodrome is David Cronenberg's groundbreaking 1983 sci-fi horror film. It revolves around his common themes of body horror and reality questioning, but it's the themes that come from the work of Marshall McLuhan that really stand out.
Further, I developed a character named Brian Oblivion, who was modeled after Marshall McLuhan, the sort of media prophet who lived in Toronto and who had a great influence on the 60s and early 70s. It is, I suppose, a comment on media, the human body, and the concept of reality as being something that is a concept of will rather than some absolute that's given to us.
The film stars James Woods as Max Wren, the owner of an underground TV station that focuses on sexual and violent content. He comes across a new show called Videodrome that seems to only broadcast sex and violence, but that content instills hallucinations into the viewer. While the film's plot is relatively straightforward, it's the themes, metaphors, and subtext that really stand out. The film was prophetic, and it's shocking how many of these ideas have been implemented in our own reality. 3 themes from specific books that I'll be covering in this video, first comparing them to the film and then to our own reality. The first books I'll be covering are The Medium is the Massage by Marshall McLuhan and The Global Village by Marshall McLuhan and Bruce Powers. This theme will cover how the internet has become humanity's nervous system and how Videodrome and the new flesh represent the modern internet. The second one is Simulacra and Simulation by Baudrillard. This idea focuses on how a copy without an original is layered into Videodrome, but how that idea is running amok in our own society. The final one is Propaganda, the Formation of Men's Attitudes by Jacques Ellul. This idea focuses on how Videodrome instills the propaganda myth into its users, and also how myths of propaganda spread in our new media landscape. There will be spoilers, so strap in and get ready to download Videodrome.
Swear. You know, in Brazil, Central America, those kinds of places, making underground video is considered a subversive act.
The major advances in civilization are processes that all but wreck the societies in which they occur. A.N. Whitehead. The new flesh and Videodrome represent how the internet is currently operating and functioning in our new media landscape. Marshall McLuhan's works, The Medium is the Massage and The Global Village, predicted how mass media of TV, movies, and print is moving towards a much larger electronic communication apparatus which would impact us all at a biological level and be an extension of our own nervous system. That apparatus he predicted over 60 years ago has now become the modern internet. A big part of Marshall McLuhan's work is the science around left brain and right brain thinking. Left brain thinking is focused on the visual and centers around logic, order, and hierarchy. It puts the individual front and center and has been leading Western culture since the creation of the alphabet. The phrase seeing is believing comes from this way of thinking. On the other side is right brain thinking, which is acoustic and is centered on intuition, creativity, and collectiveness. The term everything is everything would come from this way of thinking. Third world and Eastern cultures are still led by this way of thinking, which can cause tension with Western culture that is led by the left brain. The internet is a right brain tool since it's simultaneous, open, and collective. Due to the internet being a right brain tool, it has caused conflict with Western culture and society since the internet is everywhere and can't be placed in a hierarchy. The internet is dynamic, discontinuous, and all-consuming, which make it almost impossible to control, but that doesn't stop companies and countries in trying to put in their own structure that they can control. Ideally, Marshall McLuhan has stated that we should be led by the right side of our brain with the left following. But in Western society, the left side of the brain leads and has all but eliminated right brain thinking. Examples of this would be how there needs to be two conflicting sides and the difficulty of holding two conflicting ideas in the mind at one time. This is all represented in Videodrome by the new flesh and Videodrome itself. The new flesh represents humanity's move to the internet and becoming one with technology. Videodrome represents left brain organizations, countries, and corporations that want to use Videodrome as an interface on top of the new flesh to control the masses. Videodrome represents this change by not providing any dialogue or structure, just carnal impulses like sex and violence that slowly dismantle structure and logic in the individual, which makes the individual more open for control and propaganda. The new flesh and the internet both represent the foundation for a new world that is being challenged by Videodrome and the establishment. When the environment of instant electronic information becomes the hidden ground of all perception, choice, and preference, the ground which underlays the world of precise and quantifiable scientific study is pushed aside or dissolved. Marshall McLuhan, The Global Village. The foundation for transformation is the figure and the ground. Both stand at the heart of change in Videodrome and our own world. All cultural situations are composed of an area of attention, which is the figure, and a large area around the figure known as the ground. Constantly in interplay, figure is highlighted against the ground until a new figure takes its place. Ground is a structure or awareness of how the figure is perceived. It is environmental, subliminal, and comes before the figure. Certain cultures will be more focused on the ground, while others will be more focused on the figure. Examples would be Western art versus Eastern art. West is focused on the figure, while Eastern art is more focused on the environment. In religion, Christianity's focus on the individual, and Buddhism's focus on everything. In Videodrome, Max is the figure and Toronto is the ground, which will change as the ground around Max is transformed to the new flesh. This process is similar to how everyone's ground is changing after the implementation of the internet. The old ground is displaced and a new nostalgia is born. The interface between the figure and the ground each assert pressure, which is resonant and can cause transformation. Max's ground changes when he's introduced to Videodrome. Slowly, his Toronto environment, apartments, TV station dissolves into nostalgia. This is why at the end he runs to an abandoned, rundown area without any cultural touch points. It's because his ground is now fully the new flesh. Max's only sanity is questioned, and it's not only because of the hallucinations, but because his old ground is slipping away. This is the interim period where the old ground is replaced by the new ground. The internet is creating the same change right now. Our old ground of interpersonal groups, families, culture, and mass media being swallowed up by the internet. Both Videodrome and the internet is changing the ground underneath its corresponding figures.
don't have, Max. It has a philosophy, and that is what makes it dangerous.
In Jacques Ellul's book, Propaganda, the Formation of Men's Attitudes, he states that the key to impactful propaganda is the myth. Everyone sees propaganda every day, but that's not the propaganda that makes real change. Propaganda can't create something out of nothing. It needs a foundation of an idea or way of life. That is where the myth comes in. The myth provides a foundation of stereotypes, symbols, and ideas that can be used by basic propaganda. In Videodrome, the myth is the need to feel something real through direct sex and violence. And this myth is used to control the mind of the user. These sexual and violent triggers allow the Videodrome code to affect the user's mind. This myth allows the user to take on different avatars or icons to represent their new understanding. Max changes from a sleazy TV station owner to an obedient terrorist. Even his clothes and persona suddenly change from suit and tie to a brown jacket and casual pants. Nikki changes from a radio show host to an S&M goddess, her avatar representing her new awakening. In our world, this transformation is captured by our use of avatars, icons, and special names to represent the individual. Barry Cortex from Spectacular Optical and Videodrome explains they're wanting to use sex and violence to control.
Anybody who watches it, Max. But why would anybody watch it? Why would anybody watch a scum show like Videodrome? Why did you watch it, Max?
Business reasons.
Sure. Sure. What about the other reasons? Why deny you get your kicks out of watching torture and murder?
These left-brain corporations will fight against sex and violence as a purity initiative, but will also use sex and violence for their own agenda. Spectacular Optical is a large corporation that makes consumer products, but also works as a military supplier, and of course the creator of Videodrome, a monolith corporation that could symbolize any of our current tech companies.
North America's getting soft, Patron, and the rest of the world is getting tough. Very, very tough. We're entering savage new times, and we're going to have to be pure and direct and strong if we're going to survive them. Now you and this cesspool you call a television station, and your people who wallow around in it, and your viewers who watch you do it, you're rotting us away from the inside. We intend to stop that rot.
We're going to start with Channel 83, Max. We're going to use it for our first authentic transmissions of Videodrome. I have a hunch it's going to be very popular. For a while.
While the propaganda myth has a strong undertone in Videodrome, it is front and center on the internet. Propaganda flows freely in our global society, using different algorithms and electronic flows to capture people's minds that aren't fully aware of what they're reading or understanding. One of the easiest ways for propaganda to spread is through a literate mass that doesn't really understand what they are reading. Since there is no critical analysis, propaganda can easily influence the masses by providing information that reinforces their own ideas and stereotypes, which is tied back to their identity that is ultimately connected to the myth. Conformity and obedience is the ultimate goal for Videodrome and the users of propaganda on the internet. The creation of the internet has planted the seeds for Simulacra, copies without an original that just create copies of themselves. A global culture infatuated with imitations that only resemble signs. Signs with no meaning that only reference themselves. A culture composed of simulacra is a culture composed of copies without an original. In Jean Baudrillard's book, Simulacra and Simulation, he described this process with a map which would serve for all of human history, culture, and society and be considered the original. Society would then use tracer sheets on top of the map to copy pieces of the original map, but as time goes on, the original map frays and dissolves, leaving only the copy, which is then copied like the original. Any real meaning is attached to the original, which dissolves away with each copy. There are 5 stages of simulacra, copies without an original, which was laid out by Baudrillard. The first order is the sacramental order, which is considered a good or faithful representation of a real-life equivalent. Copies that are direct copies without any manipulation would fall into this category. The second order is the order of maleficence. This is the order that masks or distorts reality. This order is considered evil since it deliberately tries to obscure and manipulate and is not a faithful copy. The third order is the order of sorcery. This is a sign with no meaning, but the sign plays like it has meaning. There's no reference point anymore, just a sign disguising like it has meaning. The fourth order is one of simulation. This is a sign with no meaning, no reference point, and doesn't even try to act like it has meaning. The final order is one of hyperreality, where the lie is more supported and accepted than the truth. As hyperreality immerses more of reality, the simulacras will grow, making it harder and harder for anyone to know where the truth is located. Videodrome in our own reality is covered in simulacra, and the original map is disappearing at an accelerated speed. In Videodrome, the simulacra covers the film and rises as the hold of Videodrome grows. The film starts through a screen with Friday providing a wake-up call. Even the videotape wake-up call is a simulacra of an alarm clock. In the first couple of scenes, it is clear that much of this world is experienced through screens, a copy of reality through screens. Everything from watching films to the talk show is experienced through cameras and screens. Max and Nikki's first interaction is through cameras and TV screens for the TV show. The film showcases other countries and times, but these representations seem empty. Signs representing meaning that are actually vacant. Historical Japan in the video, Greek society in the video and restaurant, and finally Renaissance times in the convention. Each present a different time and place, but these elements are just empty signs that don't represent anything real. For example, in the Renaissance scene, the music and dance changes to disco that doesn't fit with the representation. No meaning, just spectacle. It's fitting that Spectacular Optical has spectacle in the name, since spectacle is used by Baudrillard to describe certain simulacra. Even the idea of Spectacular Optical being a front for Videodrome is interesting, because you could say that glasses were the first screens. The convention's presentation is riddled with references to sight. There are the quotes, "The eye is the window of the soul," and "Love comes in at the eye." There's also a large image of the creation of Adam in the background, with a sculpture of glasses in front of it. Direct symbolism of the creation of Adam representing the new flesh, with the glasses on top of it representing Videodrome. There are various forms of simulacra that seep into the film. The cathode ray mission is a copy of a standard shelter, but instead of providing food and shelter, it provides TVs to watch. The shelter's name coming from a real scientific term regarding vacuum tubes and electrons impacting visual tools that could cause the new flesh. On the meta side, Debbie Harry plays a mild-mannered talk show host with a dark side, but in reality she is a rock star who creates stimulation. The shelter's main office is covered in simulacra, religious and historical artifacts with no uniform decor, just signs with no context or cultural meaning. Mix and match culture. Even Brian Oblivion, who's a real representation for Marshall McLuhan, is represented by his daughter and a collection of videotapes. Human life is a copy and represented by technology. Even Max's comment, which comes up multiple times, is a reference to a copy replacing the real experience.
It's just torture and murder. No plot, no characters. Very, very realistic. I think it's what's next.
Then God help us.
Better on TV than on the street.
Excuse me?
Max is defending himself against criticism, but ultimately concludes that sex and violence is better experienced secondhand than in reality. Finally, there are numerous sexual and violent simulacras that color the film. Sex is first displayed through screens with no context. The pornography movies are representations of sex without passion or context. Max and Nikki also play with sex as a representation. Foreplay is done through screens.
Got any porno?
You serious?
Yeah, gets me in the mood. What's this? Videodrome.
Torture, murder.
Sounds great.
Ain't exactly sex.
Says who?
The S&M practices indicate simulacra. Violence representing sex with Nikki wanting Max to cut her, and the various Videodrome scenes. Sex representing violence with Max piercing Nikki's ears while having sex. The sexual and violent triggers are mixed. Representations of life and death without meaning. This representation continues with the flesh gun and stomach slot. The flesh gun is a representation of a penis, but is a tool for violence. The stomach slot is a representation of a vagina, but is a tool to download information. The original symbols of a gun and tape deck transformed into representations of sexual organs, but then reverting back to their original purposes. The new flesh transforming human bodies and objects into a new phase of human evolution. The copies running their own internal order like a machine. Baudrillard used Andy Warhol as the ultimate simulation artist, an artist who distilled art into reproduction, symbols into signs, the best machine for our postmodern world. Sexual flesh merged with technology, pulsating videotapes and televisions. Technology is a sexual copy. The transformation to the new flesh is complete when Max puts the actual gun into his flesh slot. Both disappear but are ultimately integrated into Max's psyche. The combination of sex and violence, death and life is pure copy. Simulacra and simulation. Simulacra has been spreading in our culture since the creation of mass media. It's very visible now in our entertainment and mass media culture. Countless sequels and reboots to the point that the original idea is lost. Every aspect of life, employment, finance, relationships, culture, and politics have all been transformed due to the creation of the internet. It's only been a handful of decades, so we're early in this change, but the simulacras will continue to grow as generations pass. This change similar to the creation of the printing press or industrial age. An example of simulacra in our current society would be trade and currency. Trade, the exchange of goods and services, would be considered the original. Currency would be considered the sacramental order since it's a faithful representation for trade. Next is the order of maleficence, which would be credit. Credit can be reproduced as currency, but there's many ways credit can be manipulated and distorted. Finally, there's investments, which would fall under the order of sorcery. It acts like it has a connection to trade, but that is just a mask. Investments are disconnected from trade in a fundamental way, since there isn't an exchange of actual goods and services, and its reference point is more of credit. This is why many investors use credit backed by investments than even deal with actual currency. Our direction now is to simulation and hyper-reality for trade and currency. There are already signs of this in regards to the stock market and Bitcoin. Copies using other copies as reference, like a virus spreading through culture. This could turn quickly into a black hole since nothing is referencing the original and the meaning is held with the original. Simulacra is all over society and culture, from our major political parties to American and global culture as concepts. The creation and growth of AI will accelerate the simulacra, especially since AI is a simulacra of human intelligence. AI has already become a simulation machine, creating anything with the use of signs of objects, but these signs are only copies with no meaning. AI is creating a world composed of only simulacra. Our culture can still see the originals and meaning, but this is disappearing quickly as everything is manipulated by copies. The book Simulacra and Simulation is a popular book that is known for being referenced in The Matrix. The irony is that the Matrix has no real connection to the theories in the book, in a roundabout way works as an example of simulacra. This is confirmed by Baudrillard himself in The Conspiracy of Art. Basically, the idea that humanity is trapped in a simulation has been around since Greek-Roman times. Baudrillard's theories on simulation is much scarier because we are doing it to ourselves. There's no architect or Agent Smith, just humanity creating and feeding lies that are spreading copies without an original or meaning. Humanity is its own Agent Smith. The new flesh represents how the internet is leading us to a world where humanity and technology are one. This relationship will be challenged by Videodrome and the establishment who want to control it. Singularity is when technology is past human intelligence and the differences between humans and technology is blurred completely. The beginning of the end for Max starts at Spectacular Optical when Barry Cortex slips him the new tape to kill his partners. At this point, we're disconnected from Max as an anchor for the film, and Max is fully mutated to the new flesh. Videodrome works as an interface over the new flesh, but the new flesh is the evolution of singularity. Videodrome is trying to control the new flesh, but Pandora's box has been opened. This is why when Holden tries to slip him another tape, his arm is transformed into a flesh grenade. Max has become one with the new flesh, so Videodrome's tapes have no effect on him. After Barry's assassination, his body morphs into multiple tumors before death. The new flesh's complete takeover. Max disappears down the industrial side of the city and finds his way to an abandoned ship. The ship can symbolize travel, in this case cerebral travel. Everything is undescriptive and looks like a postmodern landscape. Max's final step is to fully become one with the new flesh by killing the body and freeing the mind completely. Max first watches himself commit suicide on the Videodrome television. Instructions coming from a screen, a copy directing the reel. The television explodes, sending pieces of flesh everywhere. The old flesh excavated from technology. Max now completes the exact same action and commits suicide. The reel has become a copy, and the copy is now fully integrated with the new flesh. The ending of Videodrome seems depressing, but is actually liberating. Videodrome is the element that wants to control and use the new flesh for its own benefit, but the new flesh cannot be controlled. It is simultaneous and all-encompassing like the internet. The new flesh is the next step in human evolution and represents humanity's move from mass media to the internet, which has become our new nervous system. A society now being led by the right side of the brain with the left following. The importance of order and hierarchy stripped away for intuition and openness. Now, while the creation of the internet is positive, the other two elements, simulacra and the propaganda myth, are not. And I believe the key to fighting these elements is to be an individual. Society works hard to demonize anyone that doesn't fit in with the masses, because propaganda myths only work in groups. When an individual can detach himself from the group, he can build his own values, morals, and judgments that are separate from the greater group or mass. In regards to simulacra, continue to look for where the meaning of an idea or sign was originally located. Think for yourself, do your own research, be an individual. Remember that conformity is the main goal of a mass society. Videodrome is a prophetic map on where we were in 1983 with mass media and where we're now going with the internet. The internet has changed everything at a core level, and there's no going back. This transformation has created negative side effects like simulacra and the propaganda myth, which corresponds to the internet as Videodrome corresponds to the new flesh. A right-brain tool ushering in a move away from hierarchy and visual-only thinking, but will also introduce an era of control and mental triggers that work to influence the masses at a fundamental level. The spread of lies in this post-truth world will continue to multiply copies with no original. The truth hidden under copies until finally the truth dissolves to 1,000,000 copies with no original or meaning. Truth is lies, and lies is truth. Death to Videodrome, long live the new flesh.
Death to Videodrome, long live the new flesh!